Okay. Hello, everyone. This is a new setting. Hopefully, we'll try. It's a new format. So, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I will put this conversation in context for those of you who don't know. We It was September. We launched our new neighborhood guidebook with a beautiful exhibition. The exhibition took place in Regent Park and in the World Urban Pavilion at Regent Park. And we also featured, this printed guidebook. I did put a link to the guidebook if you want to see what we're referring to, because I do acknowledge that this might be a little bit hard to read in the background, but this is meant to be a conversation. So if you want to dig into the details while Misha and I are talking, feel free to use the link that I put in the chat to download the guidebook. This is session number 3 or 4 of the minds behind the new neighborhoods. And today I am obviously very special to be talking to my partner, because one of the neighborhoods that we covered is our own work, which is always very special. So this is one of the 10 neighborhoods that we covered. This one is in Seoul, South Korea. So Misha, why don't you put us, where's the location, where are we, and we'll take it from there, because this is not in Toronto.
Sure. So just and thanks for introducing me.
Yes.
Yeah. So just for context, we are located in Seoul. We didn't have wider context in these presentations, but we're in a pretty central area. We are next to the Han River. Just north of us, not far from Gangnam, which is a pretty famous neighborhood and a dense one. And we have a couple of metro stations near or very close to the site. And the site, this is replacing what used to be there actually aren't that many of them, but it's kind of low density, low rise, very modernist type of development right post-war that was pretty unsuccessful. And these are the kind of places that get redeveloped the most or most easily in that area.
So, the guidebook, the entire research project where we studied 10 neighborhoods was around the promise of new neighborhoods. What is, in your opinion, the challenge, or what do you see in today new neighborhoods that perhaps could be done better, could be done differently, that triggered the whole approach behind this design?
Yeah, so I mean, this was the approach we developed for this project and for others is in a way something that was building up for more than a decade. Because fundamentally we just were not happy enough with the way things were being done, and I don't mean how things were done for your average neighborhood, because okay, sure, you can say the average is not great, but even in the neighborhoods in this guidebook, which are representative of some of the kind of the ones implementing best practices, the ones that are award-winning, and others like them. I mean, credit needs to be given. They are much better than what we've been doing in the 50s and 60s. They have much better walking, cycling infrastructure. They have a good access to transit, usually mixed use, so there is a lot of things available. So there are many things they have improved, gotten right, better defined urban spaces. But I think, based on first on looking at presidents and also visiting them in person, they just don't. And I think the easiest test, if you compare them to almost in any one of those, if you compare them to the best older neighborhoods in the same city, they don't achieve the same level of richness. They are not as interesting. They're not as fun to be in. They're not as charming. There might be sometimes vibrant, but maybe not in the same, don't have the same energy. also just often not as beautiful. And I mean, obviously, I think it's fair to say that part of it is due to just kind of being newer, so they didn't have time to mature. But there are other aspects as well. And so we did a lot of our journey was looking into that. And I think the biggest things we found was that these new neighborhoods, even though they did better, they just don't achieve the same human scale in the same way as the older ones did. So everything is just way too large. Buildings themselves, but also the streets, the open spaces, anything in between. And also, again, even though they are doing better than neighborhoods from the 50s and 60s in kind of public transit and not being so dominated by cars, they are still dominated by cars and car infrastructure. That is still, the cars are still very present. It's the question of noise and to an extent pollution and the danger, and it's just something that prevents it from getting this having the same qualities as the older ones. So these were the main things we've seen that are missing today.
Okay, you said something really interesting, and that is the point of scale and size. Mm-hmm. Now you will look at this the 3D model. There's definitely tall buildings. Can you break it down to be, because some would question what you said, right?
Yeah.
What does it mean that things were oversized, and what is this new approach that you are trying to lead with that is specifically on this very interesting observation of a lot of what we do today is oversized?
So I think actually Seoul is a good place to demonstrate it, and this project specifically was one of just studying Seoul was one of the drivers of arriving at this approach. So Seoul, for people less familiar with it, you might have an image of the massive metro system and huge office towers and maybe some glimpses of kind of more historic traditional architecture. But and it's all true, it's all part of it. But I think the main characteristic of it, and the one that's kind of gives it its character and soul, is that it's mostly just vast, almost fields of low-rise and pretty kind of medium density houses, small shops, small apartment buildings. So most of it is like that, and you have these small buildings on tiny streets, often with pretty complex configurations, and it just. And by the way, a lot of it was created, it's not like something 100, 150 or years ago or older. A lot of it was created post-war. Most of the buildings are not that great, and still it just achieves it's so lovely, it's so appealing. It is very charming. It has these very quiet streets, and also in the same types of configurations right next to them, it has this amazing commercial energy of these tiny shops, and each one developing differently and maybe designing the entire building in a different way. And I mean, these places do have their drawbacks. I mean, they usually lack of open space, and they usually, because coverage is so high, they often have privacy issues, but it does achieve this amazing quality. And that's been what's been built there until a few decades ago. And often they would even within these places they would intensify. But what you see today in the last couple of decades, you see a lot of the development is in the form of massive master planned communities. One might be 20 or 30 towers between maybe 30 to 50 stories. So it's massive scale development. And it just affords, so it's a necessity because they need much higher density, even though that low rise is already relatively dense. So they need that. And at the beginning, it was this classic tower in a park scheme that was practically towers in a parking lot, and it wasn't that great. And they did improve upon it. So today, a lot of them have most of the parking underground, and it's kind of nice, these nice landscaped areas. But these new neighborhoods, they just, considering the density there and the amount of people and the amount of investment, it just touched a huge opportunity, a huge missed opportunity, because they don't achieve any of that, even the energy and the vibrancy, but also, of course, they lack the charm of these older places, because you have like in this stark contrast to these older ones, they have just this tower standing there, vast areas. Landscaping is nice, but you're kind of in the middle of nowhere. No streets, no, like, everything is huge. You're not close to anybody, so you practically lose on all of that potential. So these were kind of the things we saw in Seoul that were driving us. And maybe just to take it a step forward, so what we were looking for in this project, and like in others as well, but with that inspiration from Seoul, is how we can have that quality and energy of these low-rise, high coverage neighborhoods, but achieve the much higher density of the newer ones, which is required. And we knew we cannot just use the same form because we want to achieve the density, or if we were trying to just go higher in the same form, it would just create unlivable conditions. And already some of the conditions that are in these older places are not great. So we said, instead of just focusing on the form, let's focus on the experience. So the main thing here was, so we said, we looked at many options, of course, shortening the time frame here, but fundamentally what we did, so we took the high-rise, the towers, and they're arranged in a way that's not that vastly different that you would see in these newer neighborhoods. But instead of just having these massive underused open spaces, what you have closer to the ground is that dense or high coverage, low-rise urban fabric that you adjusted, of course, but that you have in these older places. So what matters is not like, okay, so you look at this image, you see, okay, it's mainly towers. That's what dominates it. But practically, what does create the experience is these places in between. So if you look at the images of how it's actually there, which you might not see, but
I do want to say that these are gorgeous photos. You can find them on our website and on the guidebook. It's absolutely stunning, and I think it conveys the entire idea of what Misha is explaining of the experience at grade with achieving the high density. But walk us through them.
Yeah. So the thing is that you see the towers. It's not that we're trying to make them disappear, but it doesn't matter, because what matters is what you're next to. The place you are is a place at a much more human scale. It has much more limited car traffic, and that's really what defines your most of your experience. And what adds to it is that, of course, because most of the density is in the towers, we have much more freedom to provide. We have much more open space than you would see in these older neighborhoods. They themselves, so you would see a lot of kind of smaller green areas in between. But again, you do achieve these qualities that you just could not achieve if only you had these very large buildings.
I do want to ask you, because basically, I'm sure that if you ask many, and I want to talk to you for a moment about things that we hear a lot here in Toronto, and that is how towers are the worst built form. They are detached from human scale. They are, and in fact, a lot of the compromise that you hear either members of the public are willing to do, or some architects, they're saying, okay, we'll do it all in mid-rise. But what we learned is that mid-rise is actually the less desirable form, and towers just suffer from a really bad stigma, but they achieve actually much better, higher quality units. And if you use them in the right tool to achieve the density, you actually can create something pretty charming at grade. What do you want to say to those who think towers are the worst type of build form we see in Toronto?
Yeah, I think this notion has is based, I think, fairly to an extent in a lot of historic precedent of what was done in the 50s and 60s, and is still being done in many places. One is if you go downtown and you have some of the, especially older towers that are just kind of these massive things just coming right to the street, often also creating wind issues. And then these towers in the park neighborhoods that were there are many reasons they were not performing that well, but that was one of them. They didn't create streets. It was just these massive buildings and nothing in between. And I think there is also something to say about a lot of contemporary design of towers. Towers are probably a bit harder to design well from the point of view of exterior than mid-rise, because there's a lot of repetition. But I think fundamentally the main issue is coming from how they were integrated in this neighborhood. So they were just, again, they did not create streets. They did not create kind of proper street walls. And the thing is that with mid-rise, if you have buildings that are 8, or especially if you're trying to achieve comparable density, 8 or 10 stories, you need a pretty large separations between them, which means you need a pretty large streets. And again, you lose that human scale. The thing is that we were saying, kind of by taking that out, that notion of focus on form, we said, okay, so there's nothing bad in seeing tower. The problem with towers is when you're just kind of walking and there's nothing else and you're standing next to them. But most people at least don't have issues seeing a skyline, and they don't even realistically have issues seeing them from some distance. So it's more about the immediate interface. So and that's what we're doing here. So you can see that in most places the towers are not right on the street. There are setbacks, or they're located behind the lower buildings. So you usually don't interface with them that directly. And of course, on the other hand, they have potential to offer much better quality in terms of units, in terms of views. One thing that's maybe it's kind of true in many places, but is especially true for Korea and Seoul, that because the country has so many mountains. For example, we have like a pretty massive hill right here. So if you have just kind of this traditional mid-rise fabric with enclosed blocks, only people in the uppermost floor at best might have any view outside the immediate streets. But when you have this more kind of point tower form that have big separations, and we also stagger them so they're usually not looking directly at each other, they have much wider views. So I mean, I know many urbanists don't really are not interested in that much in these aspects, even though they should be. But I think it is like the quality of units and how easy it is to achieve it is an important consideration. And if we can achieve that quality and achieve great quality at the street level, I think that should be a major consideration to look at using towers and just kind of making the best of it.
I want to. It's kind of my concluding question, and I will see if we have some questions from the audience. That would be a good time for you to type them in. There's something, I'm looking at this plan, and I'm looking, even in comparison to the other plans that we're seeing here, especially in comparison to the Toronto way of master planning, where these are much bigger blocks. You see those shapes, the U and the the upside U. There's something about this plan, and I again highly recommend checking it out on our website. That is by far a much granular, smaller scale. You broke it down. You can also, and that is kind of my next question about the types of streets that you offer, and their width and their use. I think you didn't cover that aspect of the plan. in the way, in this the way that we presented the plan here, it is very different from many other plans because of the scale and breaking it down to smaller components. Could you speak to those aspects of the plan?
Yeah, so I think what matters here is that I was alluding a lot to the question of the scale of the street itself, which you see in these images, but the scale, the fact that some of the streets can be so narrow also means that we can have, for using the same land area or even less, we can have much denser street network, which really contributes to both the experience directly and the ability to kind of access more things. It also allows us to have small open spaces. I don't think, I mean, you need to look at them, it online, but there are open spaces here that you would not be able to make spaces that are so small in most new development because they'll be just hidden. But like if you locate a small open space next to a wide street, it practically looks like a widening of that street. So we were, and one of the things that like that dense street network allowed us, and that's another aspect of that focus on experience, is that we can have parallel types of networks. So we have, so for example, here we have a street that's connecting us leading to two metro stations, and it's a main spine in the development. Besides connecting these two metro stations, it has some of the most important uses. It also opens to some of the largest parks. And this street, which is this is more has more commercial type of feel, so it would be something like this, and it runs parallel to a street here that provides vehicular access. So you can come with a vehicle to almost any location here. But because they're so close, we could make this street fully pedestrian. And the same way we have streets here that are also some other major spines that are not commercial, that are more kind of relaxed, more boulevard-like, that are focused on kind of the more natural setting. And again, that don't have to have access. And we have like some of the like more regular local streets, some of them have car access, and some of them don't need, and then they can, like some of them are just 4 meters wide, which again, you probably won't do that in North America, but it's actually pretty common in these older neighborhoods in Seoul, and that is how these older neighborhoods achieve that amazing quality.
That is actually one of the questions that we got. This is in Seoul. Seoul is a charming, old city charm, old city character, which in North America, some would say we lack. How would you bring this concept to North America?
Yeah, so I think, first I want to say that, I mean, a lot of people would look at photos from these older neighborhoods and so might not, like many of the buildings, as I say, that it's from the 50s, 60s, and some of the ugliest buildings like that have been built there. A lot of it is the experience of actually being there it's that scale that gets it. So I'm just saying that in the sense that, I mean, okay, they might have this type of streets, but they don't really have that many of the older buildings as we have in North America as a reference. And I think. I think in North America, a lot of the streets were oversized even before the introduction of the car. It just this almost, you could say, colonial way of thinking that's pretty common in most of the Americas, just because there was a quick expansion and the land was cheap. But I mean, now we can obviously we don't expand or design this at this scale anymore. And I think as long as we are able to, we probably won't have many like 4-meter wide streets here, but it's not a necessary condition to achieve that charm. And I mean, we do have that in some older cities in North America. You can have it in Quebec City, or have it in parts of Massachusetts, especially the part that were settled the earliest in New Orleans. But I think as what matters is not so much being kind of authentic to exactly what was done here, but kind of just doing something great. And as long as we care about achieving good living conditions, I think that creating something that is has this quality is a huge selling point.
Speaking of selling points, this is one of our, I would say, and I'm very happy to see, I looked at the list of who registered, definitely an international interest in this. And this is in Seoul. We are here in Toronto, Canada. How would you map the density requirements globally? Mm-hmm. And will this model is applicable to other parts of the world?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question that we're still kind of looking at where this specifically applies. And I would say, I mean, this specific model and approach definitely has its limitations, but like actually this level of it is a pretty high level of it's a very high level of density for most places in the world. It would not be atypical for Seoul, but even in Seoul, it's one of the denser. It's kind of one of the most high demand areas where this neighborhood is. So it is high density, and you would see it in like redevelopment in some parts of the Toronto area, around New York, around Boston, places that are most in high demand. But and part of it was like, so this is specific to this project, but it's also we chose to demonstrate on it because rather than like projects that we have in the GTA, because like I think it was about this is the densest one, and working with the most restrictive and most constraints is the most interesting because we can see that where the limits are. So we probably wouldn't be able to achieve with this the levels of density in some like places in Hong Kong or maybe some very specific areas in China, but in most places it does. And like on the other side, I think in many places you don't even need in many places just need kind of medium level of density. They're not central enough, they're not in a large enough city, they don't have enough connection to transportation, or in some areas like medium and high, even like high rise and even mid rise construction is just too expensive. And in these places I would say like what you can, if you can achieve the density you need with low rise, that's the best approach because that's even cheaper and you can achieve all these qualities already. So I think there's a lot also the question, you can control a lot of density like here just by, if you wanted it lower, you would reduce the number of stories, you would remove some of the towers, you would reconfigure it more, but fundamentally it's because the idea is that the experience is created by what's at the ground and it's only partial, much less strongly tied to how tall the buildings are. That means it's very versatile.
Okay, and that brings us to 11:30. Misha, thank you. I do see more questions, so feel free to you can find Misha's email on our website. And thank you, Misha, and thank you guys for watching.
Thank you.